The eggs were still hot on the plate. Coffee, untouched. Her fork sat crooked across the toast like a crime scene marker. I stood there in the doorway, staring at the empty chair, her phone gone from the charger. She left no suitcase. No note. No explanation. Just the front door unlocked, swaying slightly from a breeze that didn't belong to morning. And then I saw it. The hallway mirror. Someone had wiped a finger through the dust on the glass. 3 words. Don't follow me. At first, I thought it was some sick joke. She hated dust, wiped every surface twice. She wouldn't have written something with her finger unless she wanted me to see it. I walked through every room like a man looking for pieces of himself. Her jacket still on the couch. Hairbrush in the bathroom. Her perfume, the one I bought last Christmas, untouched. And yet, I knew she wasn't coming back. Not this time. That afternoon, I got a call from her coworker, Miles. I'd only met him once, years ago, at a charity auction she dragged me to. He sounded nervous. Said he didn't know who else to call. That she had missed an important strategy meeting. That her phone went straight to voicemail. I told him I had no idea where she was. And I didn't. Not really. Only that she was gone. And she wanted it that way. But later that night, something snapped into place. I checked our shared cloud account, a habit I never told her I had. Lena was never great with tech, so I set everything up years ago. Photos, calendar, backups. She thought I disconnected it. I didn't. There, buried in the recent uploads, was a video. 32 seconds. Shot from her phone. At first, it was just blackness. Then it tilted, unintentionally, like the phone was shoved into a pocket. But the sound was clear. Her voice. Laughing. Breathy. Whispering. And then a man's voice. Not mine. He really doesn't suspect anything? He thinks I'm stressed out from work, she replied. Silence. A kiss. Then her voice again. I'm ending it tomorrow. I'll make it clean. Cold. He won't fight. She was right. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I just stood there like a damn wax figure while the truth blistered through my skull. But what she didn't count on was that I wasn't going to disappear quietly. She thought I'd break. Collapse. Maybe even come crawling back. Instead, I did something no one saw coming. Not her. Not him. And definitely not the woman who would show up at my door 3 days later claiming she had proof that my wife's lover wasn't who I thought he was. She arrived just before midnight. No knock. Just headlights pouring into the front windows like some celestial interrogation. I hadn't slept. I didn't even pretend to. I was still sitting in the same clothes, same position, watching the front door like it might confess something if I stared long enough. At first, I thought maybe it was Lena. Maybe she had come back to spin a new lie, or explain away what I heard in that awful 32-second clip. But when I opened the door, I was staring at a woman I'd never seen before in my life. Late 30s. Denim jacket. Hair in a tight ponytail. No makeup. Eyes like she hadn't blinked in hours. She didn't introduce herself right away. She looked past me, into the house, as if confirming something. "You're Everett?" she asked. Her voice was strained and fast, like someone trying to outrun a decision. "Yes," I said carefully. "Do I know you?" "No. But I know her. Lena." She paused, swallowing hard. "And I know what she's been doing. I know who she's been doing it with." My hand was still on the door, ready to shut it. But something in her tone, maybe the way she said doing it with, not like a scandal but like a crime, froze me. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. No label, no stamp. Just a thick, overstuffed bundle of something that made a soft thud when it hit the side table by the door. "She's not just cheating on you," the woman said. "She's involved in something. With my husband." I looked at her now with a sinking feeling. "Who's your husband?" She smiled bitterly. "Miles. The coworker." My stomach dropped. Of course. The voice in the video. I couldn't identify it, but Lena once told me Miles had that smooth lawyer voice she liked. I had laughed at the time. Now it sounded like a confession I missed years too early. She stepped back, hands slightly shaking. "I've been collecting everything. Emails, receipts, even security footage from a private investigator I hired when I started getting suspicious. I'm not here to win you over or team up. I just thought you deserved the truth." I didn't even have time to reply. She was already halfway down the porch steps when she added, "Be careful with her. She's not the woman you married. And if you go digging, don't expect clean answers." Then she disappeared into the dark, swallowed by her own headlights. I shut the door and stood in the hall for a long time before I opened the envelope. Inside were printed screenshots of messages, some labeled by date, others highlighted. There were hotel booking confirmations, photos of Lena and Miles walking into places they had no business being. One of the images was taken just 2 nights ago. She was wearing the same jacket that still hung on our hallway hook. Smiling, lit up in a way I hadn't seen in years. Lit up in a way I thought only I could make her feel. And then, there was a receipt. A wire transfer. A large sum. From Lena's personal account to a company I didn't recognize. I typed the company name into my laptop. Nothing. No website. No business registration. Just a mention on a legal forum about quiet asset holding. That was the moment my confusion turned to dread. Because this wasn't just a secret affair. This was a blueprint for escape. Financial, emotional, and total. And I wasn't meant to know any of it. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I sat at the kitchen table with that envelope spread in front of me like a jigsaw puzzle made of broken glass. And by sunrise, I had made a decision. If Lena thought she could just disappear, wipe her hands of 12 years, and vanish into someone else's arms without consequence, she was wrong. I didn't want revenge. I wanted answers. And I was going to find out everything. Even if I had to become the version of myself she never saw coming. The silence in the house started to sound different. It wasn't peaceful anymore. It was heavy, like something was hiding between the walls, some truth that had always been there, just waiting for me to look in the wrong direction. I didn't go to work that Monday. I didn't shave. I didn't even leave the house. Instead, I opened every drawer, checked every closet, turned over every file in the cabinet we used for taxes and insurance and receipts we never threw away. It wasn't about catching her in a lie anymore. I already had that. This was about understanding what she had been building behind my back and how long she'd been building it. There was a key taped underneath the 3rd drawer in her vanity. Not a house key. Not for the car. This one was old and oddly shaped, brass with tiny stamped numbers on the side. C112. My hands were shaking before I even knew why. And then I remembered something. Something so small I hadn't thought about it in years. When we first moved in, I installed a floor safe beneath the lowest panel of the guest room closet. Lena didn't care about it. Said it was some prepper nonsense. I kept a few things there, important documents, my dad's old service pistol, and eventually, nothing. It became a forgotten box in a forgotten room. She hated that room, which made it the perfect place to hide something. When I opened the closet and pulled the rug back, the safe was still there, just like I left it. But the latch had dust marks that looked too fresh. Like it had been touched. Like someone opened it recently. I tried the key. It turned. Inside were items I hadn't put there. Passports. 2 of them. Both under her name, but with different middle initials. Different photos. One of them had stamps from countries she told me she'd never been to. Conferences she swore were canceled. A small phone I didn't recognize. Prepaid, burner style. Dead battery. And then I saw something that made me sit down, right there on the cold floor. A printed photo of me. Just me. Sitting in our backyard from behind the hedge. From a distance. It wasn't candid. It wasn't romantic. It was surveillance. And behind the photo, folded carefully like it mattered more than anything else, was a single-page letter. Typed. Not signed. If something happens to me, tell the truth. Show the files. Make sure they know it wasn't an accident. There was no name. No date. But it was tucked inside a medical billing envelope addressed to Lena R. Howell from a clinic in Nevada. One we never talked about. One she never visited. Not according to her, anyway. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not in a dramatic way. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that silently opens and never closes again. Because now I wasn't just looking at an affair. I was looking at a life she had built in shadows. Multiple identities. Hidden documents. A burner phone. A letter that felt like a confession or a warning. And I had no idea how deep it went. I drove to the only person who might know more. I hadn't spoken to her in years, not since a family argument fractured everything. But she was the only one who had ever told me, flat out, that Lena couldn't be trusted. My older sister, Marla. I showed up on her porch unannounced. She opened the door and didn't even blink. Just crossed her arms and said, "Finally figured it out, huh?" That's when I knew. She knew something, too. And she had been waiting for me to show up. Marla didn't offer me a hug. She never did, even before we stopped speaking. But she opened the door wider and nodded toward the kitchen. "You want coffee or whiskey?" she asked. Her tone wasn't sarcasm. She was being literal. At 10 in the morning. I followed her in. The house smelled like lavender and something burning. Probably the toaster again. Nothing in her place had changed in 5 years, except, apparently, her opinion of me. "You still like it black?" she asked, pouring coffee. I nodded, unsure whether to sit or stand. She placed the mug in front of me and leaned on the counter, studying my face like she was trying to decide how far she could go. I broke the silence. "Did you know about Lena and Miles?" Her jaw tightened slightly. "Not specifically him, but yeah, I knew she'd cheat. I told you that before you married her. You told me she was manipulative, not that she'd blow up our life and vanish like she's in a damn spy movie." "She didn't blow up your life, Everett," Marla said, tilting her head. "She built hers. Carefully. Over time. She just waited until you were too comfortable to notice." I stared at her, unsure how to take that. "Listen," she continued, walking to a drawer and pulling out an old photo album, not even digitally stored, just prints taped to thick black pages. "Do you remember this?" She flipped open to a page near the back. There was a photo of Lena at some summer party, years ago, long before she and I met. But my eyes immediately focused on the man beside her. He was older, sharp suit, and he looked like... "That's Miles," I muttered. "Yep," she said, tapping the photo. "They were together before you ever met her. It was messy. He was married. She was ambitious. There were rumors she tried to blackmail him when he wouldn't leave his wife. It went quiet after that. Then boom, you show up and she's suddenly interested in you." I felt my throat go dry. She never told me she even knew him back then. "No kidding," Marla replied. "Because she knew if you knew, the foundation would crack. And if she was anything, it was careful." I sat back. Everything I thought I knew about Lena was disintegrating like ash in water. Not only had she orchestrated an affair with someone from her past, she'd hidden that past like a professional. Then Marla pulled out a USB drive from a small envelope labeled with my name. "She gave this to me," she said. 7 years ago." I stared at her. "She came here crying. Told me if anything ever happened to her, and I mean disappearance, accident, whatever, that someone would come looking for this. She told me to give it only to you. No one else. Not even the police." She said that. I asked, stunned. "She said it exactly like this. One day Everett will learn who I am. Make sure he finds out everything. Not just the betrayal. All of it." Marla paused. "I thought it was just drama. Like she was playing me. But you showed up. So now I'm giving it to you." The moment I took the drive into my hand, I knew something irreversible had just happened. This wasn't about cheating anymore. This wasn't about a failing marriage or a messy exit. This was about something deeper. A hidden version of Lena I had never seen. And maybe was never meant to. I drove home without turning on the radio. The world outside felt like wallpaper. None of it real. None of it mine. When I plugged in the USB, there was only one folder. No encryption. Just a title. "If he loves me, he'll understand." Inside were over 100 files. Emails, recordings, PDFs, photos, scan letters. Some dated back nearly 15 years, before I even met her. But one video caught my eye first. Dated 1 week before our wedding. She was sitting alone, talking into a camcorder. Hair down, makeup smeared like she'd been crying. "Everett," she began, her voice shaking, "you don't know everything about me. But I've tried. I've tried so hard to protect you from what I've done. And what I've been part of. If you're watching this, then everything fell apart and I couldn't stop it." The rest of the video cut off, corrupted. The timestamp showed it should have been 7 minutes long, but it ended at 41 seconds. And then something clicked. The burner phone. The medical clinic envelope. The photo of me taken from the bushes. This wasn't about betrayal. This was about fear. And somehow, Lena had known for years that one day, her past would catch up. The corrupted video haunted me. 41 seconds wasn't enough. Not when she was finally about to speak, finally on the edge of honesty. I played it over and over, trying to lip-read the frames after the audio dropped out, trying to catch some glimmer of meaning in the flicker of her eyes, the way her fingers twisted the hem of her sweater. Nothing. The message was swallowed by time, lost behind whatever damage Lena or someone else had done to the file. But I still had the rest of the drive. I dug in for hours. Coffee went cold beside me. Daylight disappeared behind the blinds. I only noticed nightfall when the room turned dark enough that the screen became a mirror, and I didn't recognize the man looking back at me anymore. Then I found it. A scanned invoice with a signature at the bottom. A payment made 6 years ago to something called Borderline Behavioral Consulting. That meant nothing to me. But the signature did. Vivian M. Dale. I froze. Vivian Dale was not a name I'd ever heard from Lena. Not once. But it wasn't just the unfamiliarity that spooked me. It was the feeling, deep in my spine, that I had seen it before. Not heard. Seen. I searched our old bills. Nothing. Her emails. Nothing. Old cards, letters, still nothing. Then I opened our security app. It logs visitors. Motion-triggered alerts from the past year. And there, logged 6 weeks before Lena disappeared, was a woman at the front door. She never knocked. She just stood there for 7 seconds, looked directly into the doorbell camera, then walked away. I pulled up the clip. Her face was tight, pale. A long red coat. A green leather satchel. Her hands trembled like someone who had made the decision to knock, and then changed her mind at the last moment. The app didn't recognize her. I did now. Vivian M. Dale. I Googled the name. No Facebook. No Instagram. No LinkedIn. Just one mention. On a mental health watchdog blog from 2018. Vivian M. Dale, alias used in institutional programs, known to be associated with non-traditional behavioral reshaping services for high-income clients. No formal license. Activities include undocumented methods of spousal alignment, corporate silence agreements, and psychological risk conditioning. It read like conspiracy. Fringe stuff. But the name was real. The receipt was real. And somehow, Lena had paid this woman 6 years ago. It wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a fluke. I should have stopped digging. Any sane person would have handed the drive to someone, police, lawyer, priest. But sanity was long gone. I pulled the address from the invoice. It was a P.O. box. Of course. But the city? It was the same place Lena went 2 summers ago. Alone. Told me it was a wellness retreat. She said they took phones at the gate. I never questioned it. I even bought her a book to take along, something about being present. I didn't realize she was already trying to erase part of her presence. I dug further. The USB had dozens of email drafts never sent. Most were written to someone named V. Short, disconnected thoughts. More like journal entries than messages. V. Why do I still feel afraid, even though you said he's safe? V. What if he finds out before I tell him myself? What if he reacts the wrong way? V. I had another dream. This time it wasn't Everett. It was someone else watching us both. That last line chilled me. Someone else. I leaned back from the desk. The house had gone too still. The kind of still that made your ears ring. My eyes scanned the windows. Closed. Curtains drawn. Lights low. But I couldn't shake the sensation. That crawling sense just behind the neck. I hadn't seen anyone on the street in hours. But that didn't mean no one had seen me. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I hesitated. Then answered. A pause. No sound. I said nothing. Then a voice. Soft. Calm. Measured. She was right. You do dig deep when you're alone. Click. No tone. Just silence. I stood there frozen, phone to my ear, listening to nothing because silence had started to speak louder than truth. Someone was watching me. Maybe it had been for weeks. Or longer. And Lena, she hadn't vanished because she was guilty. She vanished because someone told her she was next. The next morning, I was in the car before sunrise. The GPS blinked with the address from the invoice, though it warned me the destination might not be real. That alone told me I was on the right path. 3 hours of driving, and I still wasn't sure what I'd say if I found her. Hi. I think you reshaped my wife and erased half her identity. Can we talk? I wasn't even sure she existed. But the phone call from the blocked number proved something. Someone knew I was looking. And someone wanted me to stop. I didn't. The town was nothing. Just a tired highway split by shuttered shops and a diner that looked older than time. No signs. No billboards. Not even a gas station with working pumps. I circled the area twice before I saw it. A red mailbox. No number. But the same green leather satchel from the doorbell video was resting beside it. I parked across the road and approached slowly, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping animal. The property was surrounded by trees, tall and too quiet, like they'd been listening longer than I had. The house itself looked like it hadn't been updated since 1973, weather-stained siding, rusted awnings, and a screen door that hung crooked. I knocked once. Then again. No answer. I turned to leave, already rehearsing how I'd explain all of this to the police if I had to. And then, from behind the curtain, a shape moved. The door creaked open. She was shorter than I expected. Frail almost. But her eyes didn't match her body. Her eyes were cold steel. No blinking. No smile. No pretense. Everett, she said, like she'd been expecting me for weeks. My skin crawled. I need to ask you some things, I said. You don't need to ask, she replied. You already know. You're just not ready to admit it. She turned and walked into the house without inviting me. I followed. The inside was clinical. Not messy, not clean. Just sterile. No personal touches. No decorations. No photographs. The only thing on the walls was a corkboard full of strings and papers and photos, like something out of a detective's fever dream. And Lena's face was on it. Multiple copies. Different hairstyles, different years, different places. It was her life before me, and some of it during. Why do you have this? I asked, heart racing. Vivian didn't answer immediately. She sat at the table and gestured for me to do the same. You think she left you because of the affair, she said softly. But the affair was just the exit door. Lena didn't fall in love with someone else. She was trying to escape someone she used to be. That doesn't make sense, I said, barely above a whisper. She paid me not to change her, Vivian continued, but to help her disappear from people who still believe she owed them something. I stared at her. Who? Vivian tilted her head. Do you remember 3 years ago when she lost her job? When she said it was budget cuts? I nodded slowly. Lena had come home, devastated, said her department was being eliminated. It took her weeks to bounce back, but she landed a new position in another city and commuted. Or so I thought. She didn't lose it, Vivian said. She left it. After someone from her past reappeared. Someone who remembered what she used to do before she met you. I felt like I was underwater. Nothing made sense anymore. Lena was involved in something that started before you ever met her, Vivian said, and now her voice lost its calm edge. It turned tight. She was a facilitator. Someone who helped wealthy clients restructure their lives. False records. Relocations. Disappearances. But she broke the one rule they all lived by. She fell in love with someone who didn't know. I could barely breathe. You mean me? Vivian nodded. She tried to bury that life. But someone didn't forget. And when they came looking, she panicked. She came to me not to run away, but to buy time. Time to say goodbye without making you suspicious. I stood up, blood pounding in my ears. Then where is she now? Vivian looked up. Safe. For now. That's not good enough. She paused, eyes locked on mine. You really want to know? Yes, I snapped. Then you need to understand something first, she said, slowly rising. The moment you walked through my door, you stepped into her past. And that past doesn't let people walk out untouched. I stared at her, waiting. She reached into a drawer and placed a key in my hand. Old, metal, cold. She left something for you. Locked away. Said you'd find it when you were ready. Said if you chose to come here, you deserved the truth, even if it hurt. I opened my mouth to ask where. Vivian pointed to the photo wall. My eyes followed. And there it was, taped behind Lena's photo from 5 years ago, circled in red ink, was the name of a storage unit facility 2 towns over. One I'd never heard of. One in her name. No address. No number. Just a name. Glassfield Cold Archive. Whatever was inside, Lena wanted me to find it after everything else fell apart. And now, I wasn't sure I wanted to know. But I would go anyway. Because it was the last thing left between us. And I had to see what she hid behind steel doors and years of silence. The place was hidden behind a shuttered ice plant. No signage, no staff, just a keypad and a thick layer of grime on every steel surface. The wind screamed through the cracked fencing like a warning, but I entered anyway. The name Vivian gave me, Glassfield Cold Archive, wasn't listed anywhere outside, but the key she'd handed me matched the logo etched into the lockbox panel by Unit 12B. It was colder inside. Not cold like a forgotten basement, but cold like something had been preserved in silence and dust for years. I opened the door, and the metallic groan echoed like a scream across empty concrete. The unit wasn't full of furniture or suitcases or boxes of clothes like I'd expected. It was almost empty, except for one object in the middle of the floor, a large, black plastic trunk, military grade, sealed with twin latches and a recessed keypad. Taped to the lid was a single yellow sticky note in Lena's handwriting. You're not who you think you are? I'm sorry. My hand shook as I entered the 6-digit code Vivian had given me. It beeped, hissed, then unlocked. Inside was everything she'd taken from our home over the years. Every letter I thought I'd lost. Every old family photo. Every document I assumed we'd misplaced in one of our many moves. But these weren't keepsakes. They were clues. At the bottom of the trunk was a file folder with a rubber band around it. On the cover, it said, James Everett Howell, Marital Records, Observed Materials, Classified. My name, full name, but I had never seen that file before in my life. I opened it, already feeling like the air had changed. The first page hit me like a bat to the ribs. Psychological summary. Subject unaware of early participation in Study 9C. Memory intervention successful. The rest was unreadable at first. I was skimming, flipping pages, until I hit something that stopped everything. Photos of me. As a child. Inside a building I don't remember. Wearing a badge with my name on it. Subject 119C, Family Reconstruction Simulation. I stumbled back, nearly falling over the edge of the trunk. It didn't make sense. I wasn't part of any study. I had a normal childhood. Didn't I? More papers, all stamped with the same institution name, Dresscroft Institute for Behavioral Conditioning. I'd never heard of it. I looked it up on my phone. Nothing. It had been scrubbed from public records. And then I found a letter and signed, just like the others, addressed to Lena. You won't remember? That was the point. But if you plan to stay in his life, you need to understand what he came from. You need to know what was taken and what was left behind. There were maps, timelines, diagrams of human behavior cycles, and somewhere near the end of the folder, a photo of Lena. Not just one, dozens. In different towns, different names. She wasn't running from danger. She was the danger. Or at least, she had been, until she met me. That was the point. She had chosen me because I was someone else. Because I wouldn't ask questions. Because I was built, shaped to trust. Because whatever they'd done to me, it worked. Until now. Now, I was unraveling. Every memory I thought was mine began to flicker. Birthdays that didn't line up with photo timestamps. Friends I remembered but never found online. Places I swore I'd visited that didn't exist anymore. What if none of this was real? What if Lena wasn't just escaping from her past, but from the version of me that was never supposed to wake up? I sat there in the dark of that storage unit, surrounded by the remnants of a life I no longer trusted, holding a page that simply read. Everett, if you're reading this, it means the experiment failed. And you've remembered enough to be dangerous. I'm gone because I had to be. Not for my sake, yours. My phone buzzed again. Another blocked number. I answered it with my hand trembling. This time, the voice wasn't disguised. It was her. Lena. I need you to stop digging, Ev, she said softly. Because if you keep going, I can't protect you anymore. And then the call dropped. No goodbye. No location. No hope. She was alive. But I had no idea where. Or who she was anymore. And maybe worse. I didn't know who I was, either. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that phone call. Every time I closed my eyes, her voice echoed through me like a warning stitched into bone. I can't protect you anymore. I couldn't stop thinking. Protect me from what? From the truth? From myself? I didn't go back to Vivian. I didn't call Marla. I didn't even open the remaining files in the folder. Instead, I drove. No destination. Just motion. Small towns, nameless roads, gas station coffee. I needed air. Space. Silence. But silence had its own voice. Somewhere outside of Yatesville, a town not worth its own sign, I pulled into an old campground. It was off-season. Empty. A small lake in the middle, still half-frozen. I sat by the water and watched it melt. I remembered something. From long ago. Or maybe not. Lena and I, sitting in our backyard under a cheap string of lights. She was humming. The kind of hum that didn't match the song on the radio but still felt like music. I had turned to her and asked something stupid like, "Do you ever wish your life started somewhere else?" She'd smiled. "No," she said. "Only that I got here sooner." Back then, I thought it was romantic. Now, I realized she meant me. She wished she had met this version of herself earlier. The version that loved me, not the one running from everything else. That's when the message changed inside me. She hadn't just left. She had spared me. The old Lena, the one with the hidden names and tangled shadows, had chosen to end her story with me before it unraveled completely. And maybe that wasn't betrayal. Maybe that was mercy. In the fading light by the lake, I made a choice. Not to chase her anymore. Not to decode every page of that file, or hunt down the men behind the voice on the phone, or dig into the program that may or may not have rewritten my memory decades ago. Instead, I walked away. I left the storage unit key and the USB in a safety deposit box labeled for Marla. She'd know what to do with it. If I ever needed to remember again, it would be there. But I didn't. because I was done living in the version of myself built on shadows and questions. I wanted to live forward. 3 months later, I started over. New apartment, new job, somewhere coastal. The kind of place where strangers smile too easily and forget your name just as fast. It was perfect. One morning, I opened my mailbox and found a small package. No return address. Just my name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a book. The same one I gave her for that wellness retreat. The Art of Being Present. Tucked inside was a photo of us. Before everything. The backyard. The lights. Her hum. On the back, she had written one line. You were the only part that ever felt real. I sat with that for a long time. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. Because maybe, in the end, truth isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing enough to let go.